Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all are having a great week and are very excited for our today's talk. We have with us two great army men, one brigadier from the Indian Army and the other major from the Malaysian Army. Two different nations, but yet the same background. We have with us Dr. Prabha Garanji, who is a certified project management professional, project risk management professional, and is also managing training for numerous international people. Now, isn't that great? Army and training, two different yet competitive and yet intertwined journeys that Sir has taken apart, and today he's going to share his journeys with us. On the other hand, we have Brigadier Sushil Bhasinji, right from time consciousness to leadership, military leadership, author, trainer, you say it, and he's done it all. So today I'm very, very excited to talk about this topic, leading learning transfer in an agile environment with these two great gentlemen. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rajvi.
I really
I will also take this opportunity in extending a very hearty welcome to Major Prabha. That's what we call him in short. And thank you very much for accepting my invitation. You have really touched my heart for the last 2 years, and it's very nice to see you here on this platform. Thank you, Prabha.
Thank you, sir. An honor is mine.
I'll start with Bhasin sir to just ask him that how did you connect with Prabha sir, and why did you choose him the right person to talk about such an important topic about agile environment and learning, leading learning transfer. So what
Okay.
was the drive there?
Thank you, Raji. It was in the beginning of COVID, and I have a friend in Malaysia who's also my student from Train the Online Trainer program called Nara. And Nara came out this idea that he said, I have a friend from the Malaysian army, and can we do something? And I used to be talking those days on battlefield to boardroom. So actually, he was the anchor and he was the moderator, and he got the two of us together, and we had a very nice webinar in which we had this conversation around battlefield to boardroom. Now, after having interacted with Prabha, we became good friends on social media and we were interacting a lot. And I discovered that we are both from the army, so that's one. Second, both of us, after our hanging the uniform, have been into training, that is two. And the third is, which is very important, that we are both very passionate, very enthusiastic, and highly result oriented trainers. And we found that as we went along, we resonated with each other a lot. And then to add to that, we are both professional speakers. I'm a part of an organization in India called PSCI, which is Professional Speakers Association of India. And Major Prabha is a member of the MAPS, which is Malaysian Association of Professional Speakers. And we both these associations come under the umbrella of something called GSF, which is Global Speakers Federation. So that's been my journey with Prabha, and the way we have been. And when we invited him at the PSS, uh, I learned more about the commonalities between what he was saying and what I was saying, and that was all about learning transfer. And I thought this topic, we can share some of our ideas with those who could be interested in it. So thank you, Prabha, for being here.
My
Indeed.
pleasure, sir. Thank you.
I'll move to Prabha sir directly and ask him about training. He's into training since a couple years now, sir. So, how do you define training, and what makes your training unique and stand out in the world? How do you define that I am the best at this, and this is what makes me me in my training, sector?
Thank you, Rajvi. Once again, thank you very much, Brigadier sir.
Thank you, sir.
What makes my training different? Let me start with the definition of learning, Rajvi and fellow listeners. Long time ago, when I went to university way back in 1985, my bachelor's degree before joining the military was Bachelor's in Science Education. It's a 4 years program. And the lesson always starts with basic definition. What is learning? Unlike what we think, learning means Googling and getting information and getting straight A's and getting the gold medal, etc., etc. My professors define learning as change in behavior. In another word, knowing is not learning. In today's world, knowing means your Wi-Fi is working. Just Google it. So knowing is not learning. So in my class, my program, I always emphasize learning means change in behavior. And what are the desired behavior that going to get the business result? And it is not an activity in the classroom alone. I would call that a program, a combination of multiple projects that I'm excited to share some of my perspective over the last 33 years, including being part of a mega shipbuilding project in Malaysia and Germany. Looking forward to talk more about that, Rajvi.
Thank you, sir. And how do you think that your training is different? What is your USP of your training that you give throughout the globe?
Right. I'm not very sure whether it's significantly different. I'm sure all trainers have similar aim. That is, we would like to add value to the learners in order for them to transform themselves. So it always begin with end in mind. What kind of behavioral changes that need to happen? And in order for the behavioral changes need to happen, they need to understand what I call as intellectual buy-in. Meaning whatever we are talking, it must make sense to them. Because we deal with adults, we deal with people with a lot of knowledge. Sometimes we deal with people who are more expert than I am. Just last week, I had a group of chief executive officers. One of them was 70 years old. Very, very experienced CEO in the country. For us to engage learners, whatever we say must get their what I call as intellectual buy-in. It must make sense to them. Next, it must get what I call as emotional buy-in. It must make sense to their heart and their head. And in my training, I spend a lot of time and effort to understand their needs. I use the concept from design thinking called learner persona. So when I'm having a conversation with the learner, I'll get their background, I'll get their need, I'll get their pain, I'll get what they want to gain. And all this is part of the research before you start your class. This is one little, I'm sure, I hope many other trainers do the same, but this is my standard model, Rajvi.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing that, with us, and giving us an insight towards your training sessions and how do you take training as a whole. So, what, as sir has talked about, the army backgrounds that you guys come with and the same, training backgrounds that you come with. So, what are your views on the similarities of your journeys and, the path that you've taken post your army career?
So, Rajvi, I believe very strongly that every army officer by default is a trainer, because in peacetime, your sole job is to train your troops for war. So, everyone is training. But some of us get an opportunity of becoming formal instructors in our schools of instruction. And I did a lot of that. So, in my 34 years in the army, I did multiple tenures as instructor, as commandant of a training establishment, in the Faculty of Studies of the Army War College. I was also a Brigadier General Staff in the Army Training Command. So I have seen training at all levels, at micro and macro levels, and also seen different perspectives. And when I stepped out from the army, I have been using those training experiences into the corporate world. When I ever discuss this with Prabha, not only with him, I have had opportunities of discussing this with British officers, with American officers, uh, even with Pakistani officers when we met them in various places. Like I was in a prisoner of war camp in 71, and I used to be with the Pakistani officers almost every second day because we used to be on duty in the PW camp. I have, and we've done staff college with foreign officers. We've done other courses with foreign officers. We find that the learning principles are almost the same. Every army has something called principles of war, and somebody has some army will have 5, and somebody will have 8. In India, we have 10, but they are all similar. They're all similar. So, I think the relationship between the performance of army in civil, which is basically training, the army in peacetime is only training. It doesn't do anything else. It's training for war. And when you come into the corporate world, you find that that experience of training your troops to be able to face bullets, to be able to do something move at night in any inhospitable climate, whether it's a snowstorm or whatever. If we can do all that, there's nothing that an army guy can't do in the corporate world.
You've said it. You've said it out there. Agar we can make the our country win wars and fight against the most harshable environments. I don't think there's anything we cannot do. So, what are your views on it, Prabha sir? What are your views on this?
Yeah, like what Brigadier sir said, in the army, if you are not skilled, you literally come back as a body bags. In a corporate worst case scenario, maybe the business go bankrupt. Yeah? But in life, as an officer, you are not only responsible for your life, you are responsible for your troops' life. And it is very, very painful to attend funerals and facing the children, the parents, and as perhaps you are aware, in the army, even funeral is a military ceremony. And the last thing that I want to attend as an officer is a funeral that could have been avoided. Unfortunately, I have attended a couple of funerals. So the whole idea is when you are training a person, it's not about ability to shoot at the shooting range or performing in the military academy. It is performing during the war, during the crisis, during a very, very challenging environment. And you need to have the right mental state. As an officer, when you are the way you walk, the way you talk, you may have fear on your own, but you need to manage and be the source of inspiration for the entire team. So being able to apply the learning in the most challenging condition is a core competency of any army officer. And I think this competency is relevant in the harsh, challenging corporate world today. Sorry, you're muted.
Rajvi, we can't hear you.
I'm so sorry. I think you've mastered both the army land as well as the corporate land, led people both the places and have, shown the world that it's just the same environments yet different, and different environments yet the same. So thank you so much, sir, for that. Moving on to and ask, Brigadier sir, we had this term that came up around a lot of the times when we were going through discussions about this live event, measuring training effectiveness. What do you mean by that, and how do you define that?
So, this is another area where Major Prabha and I feel quite strongly about that. When he talked about learning being a process which results in change in behavior, the desired behavior.
Yes.
How can we achieve that? And if you do trading and you are not able to measure the result, you don't know whether your training is really effective or not. That means you have a feedback. You have to have a system in which you get to understand whether your training is bringing those results that you want or not. So that is when uh, we talk about the sorry yeah, we're talking about what's happening. Yeah. Uh, we're
Measuring,
talking about measuring training effectiveness. Sorry, I was trying
measuring
to.
training
Yeah.
effectiveness. Yes.
Yeah. So here it is.
Indeed, indeed. Prabhasa, what are your views on measuring training effectiveness?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure many listeners here and generally the training community perhaps is well aware of the famous evaluation model called Kirkpatrick. It has been evolving for many years now. Jim Kirkpatrick, the son and the daughter-in-law of Donald Kirkpatrick, the founder of this model, came out with New World Kirkpatrick Model. I got a privilege of being certified in that, where we go into a little bit more detail about measuring training effectiveness. Unfortunately, majority of the organization measure what is called as the first level. First level, sometimes we call smile sheet. I know I'm sure many of you have attended training. Right after the training, they will ask you to fill up and how you feel. That is basically a reaction, like going for a nice movie. You come back excited about the movie. And sometimes the movie heroes who wear army uniform, they were treated like a military war. You know, they got celebrated, right?
Yeah.
So this is the feeling, the emotion. I'm not saying it's not important, but that's not going to do anything if we don't acquire the second level, what is called as the learning. You need to understand the underpinning principles, comprehension, the philosophy behind an activity. But the most challenging part in measuring training effectiveness is what is called as the level 3, which is the behavioral changes. We can discuss this more, but what I'm trying to say here is, let's say like Brigadier Sir is very famous for his team building and leadership. So someone may attend his class for team building and a lot of experiential learning. But when they go back to the workplace, the working environment, the leadership, the organization's culture must be conducive for teamwork. The organization culture must be conducive for people to apply what they learn. And when people don't do, for example, my neighboring country in Singapore, let's say people attend training, simple thing, do not litter, take care cleanliness. There will be a signboard. In Singapore, if you throw even a sweet wrapper, you will face the consequences. And that started 20, 30 years ago. Today, perhaps one of the cleanest city in the world. So in order for learning to be translated into behavioral change, it requires the commitment of the entire organization, and it starts with the leaders. So
Leaders.
measuring training effectiveness at the level 3 is the behavior. When the behavior is consistently demonstrated, the natural consequences will be the business result. And it's a process, it takes time, it takes effort. But sometimes I tell my friends, training is like a seat. If you don't have the level 2, level 3, level 4 measurement, it's like you have budget for the seed, but you don't have budget for the water and the fertilizer. The highest quality seed will become dry seed. So expensive dry seed.
Yeah, that was well said. Rajvi, let me
Yes.
add a little to this. See, when we are talking about the learning transfer, uh, I think we all start with a, like what Prabha said, begin with the end in mind. You
Yeah.
want to know the terminal objectives, and I get very seriously involved with the client to give me in writing what I call the desired outcomes. What is that change in behavior that you want to see? And transforming adult behavior is a very, very challenging task. It is not easy because as we grow in life, our beliefs, our thoughts, they become quite rigid and it is not easy to change them. And therefore, a good trainer first has to know where you are and should know where you want to be. You know this gap. And then you'll work from moving a person from here to here. But I always aim at bringing them here because this is your perceived best. But your real best is actually always better than your perceived best. So I always say that you are much better than what you think you are. And therefore, training becomes very interesting, it becomes very challenging when you define these two levels and then move people through your processes. It is not a one time job, it is a process, it has to be done repeatedly. And it is a very painful thing when you do all that and the organization, like he said, does not give you that environment. I must tell you a short incident here, a story that I had a company which came to me for training. And by the way, I normally will boil down to 2 or 3 lessons that you want to do in one program. If you have a list of 10 items, nothing gets done. So it's good to focus on 2 or 3 concerns of the organization, which are the prime concerns, and let's tackle them. So, one of the 3 concerns by an organization was time management. They said our people just don't come on time, they don't deliver on time, they don't have that time mindset. They don't realize the value of time at all. So I think by the end of first day, they were quite awakened. On the second day, they told me, "Sir, now we got it and we are going to do it." After a month, there's one of these people who called me up and he said, "Sir, tell me, when we came back from your training, all of us, 100% of us, were convinced that we need to be all as an organization, be very punctual, be very careful that we are on time and all that. But, sir, what happens when you will he, that you are waiting for the MD to come for a conference, and we are 40 of us, and we waited for 1 hour with no information. If you say that, okay, I'll get late, then you could be sitting in your offices and finishing some other work. But you already got into the conference hall and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting and you wait for 1 hour. Your 40 hours of your company's time have gone down the drain. And who's done it? The MD. And when he comes, he thinks it is his privilege to come late. So he neither apologizes nor makes any mention of that and continues with the meeting as if nothing had happened. So I did get to this HR first and then to the MD. It was not easy, but I had to convey to him that, sir, if you are looking for a change in the organization, you will have to start. The change has to start with you. If you
Yeah.
want anything to change, you have to change yourself first.
Yeah.
And in the army, we say you have to lead by example. There's no
Yeah.
way you can say, I will come late, but you come on time. It doesn't work.
I think so. This is the rule of life, lead by example.
Yeah,
If you want someone to do something, you got to do it and show it to them. That is the only way that they are going to follow you. The word
absolutely.
transformation has been highlighted very nicely in our comment section. I'd really like to thank Pratap sir and Bharti ma'am for taking this initiative. The key word is transformation. That is what Pratap sir says. Change in behavior. Every other funda is academic. That's to the point that we are talking. Thank you, Pratap sir. Thank you so much for your kind message. Thank you so much. The key word is transformation, change in behavior. Every other funda is academic. That is exactly what we are trying to talk over here. The
And
transformation
and
up.
Bharti, sorry, Rajvi, just let me point out, and I hope Pratap is listening. There's a difference between change and transformation.
Yes,
So
yes.
people are looking for change, and we talk of change management and all that. So change is something that changes temporarily and can come back. For example, I go for a walk every morning, and after 10 days, I feel lazy and I stop going for a walk. So I'm back to square one. That
Yeah.
is change. Transformation is something which is more permanent. Transformation is that it's got into your DNA, that it's become a part of your life and it doesn't change. Like when you put milk in your tea, then you can't separate the milk from tea. So that means it's not reversible.
Not
So
reversible,
transformation
indeed.
is not reversible, whereas change is reversible.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, for pointing that out. Prabha, sir, would you like to add something to the conversation that we are happening about transformation?
Yeah, very interesting, like what Brigadier said. In order for us to have sustainable transformation, the environment, once again, like what Brigadier said, the leaders. Sometimes you don't have to say anything, but what you don't say and what you don't do say a lot. For example, you come 5 minutes late and you consider that it's okay. That means you are becoming counterproductive to the great transformation initiative.
Initiative.
So, if what you think, what you say, and what you do is not aligned, it will create confusion. So, organization, we are already bombarded with a lot of multiple channels of communication nowadays. So, leaders and everybody for the matter should be consistent in their messaging. What they think, what they say, and what they do must be consistent. If we
Consistent.
are not, at least we are aware of it and make an effort for calibration. Don't justify that. That will add value as a catalyst for the transformation to happen.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, sir. I'll just take a moment here and go back to our today's topic, which is, leading learning transfer in an agile environment. Prabha, sir, how do you define an agile environment? What is an agile environment for you?
Well, adaptability to change, you know, agile, that's so much of changes happening. You know, the only constant is change. But perhaps we have heard about it long time ago. I think the entire world, especially after the pandemic and during the endemic phases, the entire business model is changing. So an agile environment is an environment which is constantly changing. And that is actually very common in the military. You can do all the plan at the battleground, during conflict, during crisis, You need to be comfortable with what famously known as the VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. These are the environment which is agile. So someone who wants to be relevant in this organization or in this environment must be able to adapt to the change, adopt to it, and transform the problem into opportunities. And that requires leadership, and that requires great thought process on the ground, especially in a crisis mode.
You know, Prabha, this term VUCA came out in the US Marines in the late 90s. And from there till now, it's almost been 30 years. So I've modified this term and I call it the VUCA D3 world.
Yeah.
And what has happened to VUCA, there are three D's that have made the thing more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, more ambiguous. The three D's are diverse, disrupt, and digital. These three terms or these three characteristics of the present environment have made learning, made leadership more challenging. And we really need to be catered for that. Like what Prabha said, the army is well known for its meticulous planning. You will go to the last detail and you will plan as much as you can. You will also have certain contingency plans which are in place, but all these plans last only till the contact with the enemy is made. And the moment contact with the enemy is made, there is chaos. And all our life, we are taught how to handle chaos. So, chaos doesn't surprise us. We live in chaos and we love chaos and we work in chaos.
Yeah. Just to add what Brigadier Sir said, when the environment is all conducive, it's everything according to the plan. The weather is good, the workers are good, the suppliers are good, the business environment is good. To a certain extent, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can become a leader.
Yeah.
The true leadership will be tested when we are having crisis. During crisis, I would love to know whether the leader is part of the problem or part of the solution. The way they manage the team. We need leaders
Indeed.
who are part of the solution. If they expect everything to go according to the plan, everything work according to what they intended, everything goes according to what is expected, that don't require much. That's not a leadership challenge. I don't get excited with that kind of environment. Back to you, Raj.
Let me also just add something here. When you when you are in a VUCA world, what is the solution? How do you lead in the VUCA world? And the funny part is that the solution is also VUCA. The solution is also VUCA. V is for vision. U is for understanding. C is for clarity. And A is for adaptability and agility. So to handle VUCA, you also have a solution which is VUCA.
Wonderful, wonderful. If I may add,
Yeah.
Rajvi, listening to Brigadier Sir brought me
Yes, sir.
memory about 26 years ago. I was a young military officer being trained in America in one of the military academy, and I was introduced to a concept called CALL. What it means is Center for Army Lesson Learned. Center for Army Lesson Learned. So what we do in the Center for Army Lesson Learned, we celebrate mistakes. We do something called after action review. Meaning, When things go wrong, we need to be aware mistake is an event, not a person. Mistake is an event. So, in my leadership role, whenever my team make any mistake, of course, if they deserve a punishment, they will get the punishment. But I will always understand what was the consequences of that mistake and what were the cause of that mistake. So we need to do the cause and effect, the root cause analysis. Because some people don't make any mistake because they just become followers. We say ship is very safe in the harbor, but that's not why we build ships.
Yeah.
So if you
Ship is
want
supposed
to try something new, there are risks. And a good leader is someone who will be able to manage that risk. And in order for us to be prepared in an uncertain condition, we need to be well trained, and competency is always defined as ability to perform under the desired condition. In the military battleground, it is the most challenging condition.
yes, indeed. If the
In
pressure of
fact,
winning, you have the opponent right
Rajvi,
in front of you. Hanji, sir.
Rajvi, let me just bring in something here. A very short story that I just remembered when Prabha was talking about it. I was commanding a transport company in Delhi, and in those days, accidents were, a major thing, major concern for any visiting officer. Any inspecting officer would come and say, "What's your accident state?" And there was a very, very big effort and focus on prevention of accidents. So when I was talking about accidents, my general officer commanding, and he's the only one who said this ever, he said, "Sushil, if the vehicles move on the road, they will meet an accident. If you don't do it, some other DTC bus will come and hit you. If you don't want accidents, don't take a vehicle out of your garage. That's the only way to prevent accidents." So he says, when I go to units, I want to just know what are the systems and prevention processes in place. If you have done that and your drivers are trained in that and still you have an accident, I don't care. So very few leaders would do that, but that is what. So what he said was very right. You have to take risks. You have to take risks.
Yeah. I think the whole accident part, when I remember when I was a kid and when we got a new car at home, I was very scared to let the car go out because I was like, this is my favorite car and I don't want any scratch on it and I want it to be all glassy and shiny. And I remember when a first driver hit it, rather I was discussing this story with my dad yesterday. When my first driver hit the car, I was crying. I was crying like I don't know, like someone had slapped me or hit me, and my mom was like, "It's just a car. It's supposed to get wrecked. It's supposed to be moving on the road, and it's supposed to get scratches. If it does not get that, then it's not fulfilling its duties." So you need to understand that everything is happening because of a reason, and that's the system and the cycle of it. You are going to step out in the world. You're going to be hit by the world. You need to understand how to stand strong against the winds blowing against you. So I think this is a very important point that we've highlighted here. The word that's come out the most is leader. Bhasin sir, you are a military leadership trainer. You talk about leadership all day, all night. So how do you, think leadership and training are intersected with each other, and how are they important to each other?
Very important. A leader is a trainer. A leader has to train his people. He has to coach his people. He has to be bringing up his team to a certain level. And therefore, training goes hand in hand with a leader. The best part is that a leader's job is to create more leaders. A leader's job is not to create followers. And a good leader is the one who makes his own position or his own uh, his own responsibility, uh, like what should I say? that he has somebody else to do it. He becomes in dispensable. He wants to leave. There's another word is not coming in my mind, but what it means is that you make yourself um, not necessary, not essential for that job. Somebody else should be able to do it. That means you train your people to fill that space, right? And that is why a leader needs to be constantly mentoring and training his people so that they grow to fill up the space. So when one person gets promoted, the other people already there to come into that space. So that is what the leadership cycle is. And leadership leadership itself is a learnable skill, and everyone needs to brush it. So people say leaders are born. Even if there are people, I mean, it's a debatable point, but I think there's a truth in either of them. There are some people who are born leaders, but they also need to be trained. They have to refine. They can't You can't become a leader just because you had some courage, you had some intrinsic qualities of a leader. No, they also have to be trained. And even if you're not a basic material, like in the army, we say we are all trained to be leaders. But we go to the National Defense Academy or to the Indian Military Academy, the first thing is that the Services Selection Board has uh, filtered, selected people. That means you have the basic leadership qualities. So maybe that is what you can say is leadership is that you are born leaders. But now the 4 years of training is all about refining and reinforcing your leadership skills. So therefore, we in the army, from the beginning till the end, are learning all the time. And that's a big mistake I made in my mind. When I was in a scenic school, I was very keen to join the army for various reasons, but one of them was पढ़ाई से छुट्टी मिल जाएगी. I will be absolutely like, I don't have to go to college, no more studying. And that was the biggest mistake of my life. The army made you study and study and study till the last day of your service. It doesn't let you sit down. So you learn a lot.
I think you learn a lot in all fields, and army is one field that pushes you. Ki bhai, you have to do it. There's no backing out, or there's no exit door right in the middle of it. Initially, we had talked about PSAI and about how Sir has you and sort of connected over there. Sir had talked about a very interesting topic on PSI, which was the great training robbery. Now, that word itself is very, it's a double meaning word when you have great training and then there's a robbery attached to it. So, Prabhasa, would you like to go over this and talk us through the entire great training robbery?
Sure, Rajvi. I shared in that amazing webinar work by an author from Harvard Business School, Michael Beer, published in 2016, October. And he mentioned globally for management and leadership related training alone, in 2015, the investment was 356 billion US dollars. 356 billion US dollars. But more interestingly, when they did a survey, guess how many percent of that learning was translated into performance improvement? Rajvi, you take a guess. How many percent of that investment translated into the desired behavioral change? Because when you conduct training, they will always have nice proposals, the desired learning outcome, the learning objective, the rationale, why the training is required, and so on. As such, leaders invest money, countries invest money. And we know for pandemic and all that, a lot of money has been gone for upskilling, reskilling. But guess what? Around how many percent? Any guess, Rajvi?
Let's see
I
if
think
anyone in the
to seven
audience.
percent.
Sorry,
5 to 7%.
5 to 7%. Wow.
Okay, let's have somebody from the audience come up with a guess.
Looking at the way you're saying it, so it looks like it's a very less number that got translated there. So we look at
Yeah.
our audience. What are their guesses?
Well,
I don't find anyone using his fingers on the keypad.
Prabha sir, would you like to tell us?
surprisingly, rather unfortunate, less than 20%. So if an organization is investing billion ringgit or $1 billion or billion rupees in training, if it's only 20% of it is applied, 80% is a waste. And the leaders who are responsible for that, Michael Beer, the Harvard professor, called that great training robbery. And of course, I'm sure no leaders wants to rob money from training, or they want to, I'm sure everybody have good intention. But I hope our conversation today will create awareness that in the process of performance solution or capacity building or talent development, whatever name you call it, training is only an activity. There are post-training and pre-training activity. One of the book that, in fact, coincidentally, tomorrow I'm doing a book review with some of my learners. I'm sharing the words of wisdom by Robert Brinkerhoff. Somebody I like because he was trained in the US Navy. And he joined the US Navy 1 year before I was born in the 1964. And now he's a professor and a leader in measurement, evaluation, and learning transfer. He emphasized, if you want to have good training, there must be enough effort and resources before the training, that called pre-training, like what Brigadier Sushil said. Call the person, have a conversation, just like a doctor. They spend a lot of time on diagnosis. Based on that, conduct the training. Let's call that prescription. But right after the training, you need to have resources, effort, called post-training. That could be coaching, that could be mentoring, that could be leaders walk in and just ask the question, hey Prabha, you attended Brigadier's team building work. How is it being applied in the organization? What can I do? What can we do? Conversation like this makes all the difference. So if people are busy for pre-training activity and post-training activity, my humble suggestion, don't waste your money on training. What is the best and the only way, in my opinion, for training to get the result is, if you have limited, I'm a businessman, yeah, resource is limited. So if you have only, let's say, $10,000 for training, according to Brinkerhoff, it's recommended about 20% of it for earlier pre-training activities, and 50% of it is for post-training activities. Manage your resources well. I understand resources are limited, but don't use that as a reason for not paying attention for post-training activity. That is how we can avoid the great training robbery. Back to you,
Thank
Raj.
you. Thank you so much, sir. I think that's a very well said and well put, in front of us, how we pay a lot and we don't reach the final stage of it. The filtration does not happen. I think a lot is stuck there. Yes, sir. Basin, sir, over to you.
So I wanted to add here that right from the beginning, that is in 2004, when I stepped into the corporate world, I have been very concerned, and that is where I find Prabha also equally having that, we share that concern of seeing that change in behavior in an organization which we attempt. And I have always divided my training into three parts. The pre event, which means knowing the customer, knowing a little more about their work environment, knowing a little bit about their organization culture, their communication systems, the trust they have in each other, and all that. When you know that, then you know, because if you don't know where you are, how can I know? How can I move from there to where I want to be? So in a GPS also, you want to know where you are and you want to know where you want to be, and then only can you get the right direction. So we must pin this, and that happens in the pre-event process. The second part is the delivery, the actual conduct of training. And the third is follow through. If you don't follow through, you don't take feedback, you don't take corrective actions. So when you say, okay, how much change did it make? There was a change in this department, but the same change was not in the other department. So was the leader responsible for it? Were the people responsible for it? And if you don't take those corrective actions, that means, like what happens in a classroom, a teacher needs to work a little harder on a weaker student, maybe give extra tuitions for him to come up to the same level. Similarly, in an organization, the HR or the L&D people or the leader himself, he has to make sure that everyone moves from where he was to where he wants, where he is desired to be. And in the remarks column, in the comments, I have given these three links. I spelt out these three stages with the example of one of the trainings I did for Mother Dairy 2 months back. And it'll be good if anyone is interested. You see these three posts on LinkedIn, which give out the details of what the three steps are.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing such an insightful topic to us, and actually making us understand the in depth of training. Um, what Just one question to what do you think is the biggest, you know, what is the most costliest thing a company would have, a corporate company would have? What do you think is the most costliest thing that they have? Starting
Yes.
with Prabha, sir.
For me, not optimizing the talent, because whether you are a company or whether you are a country, the biggest resources that you have is talent. And talent is like diamond, you need to polish it, you need to create the environment. So if you have great engineers, but you are using them as a mere technician to follow the standard operating procedures or follow the guideline and not optimizing their capability, for me, that is the biggest waste. Underutilized talent and not optimizing talent. Because the whole journey, I remember way back in 1989 when I graduated from my bachelor's degree, one of the well-known professor gave the shortest speech that I've ever heard. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen, you are a graduate today. But remember, graduation does not mean you are a learned person. Graduation means you have license to start learning effective.
Very good.
If an organization don't invest time and money and effort to create the opportunity for learning effectively, that is the biggest waste.
Thank you, sir. I think that's the best said. Bhasin, sir, what are your views?
So I feel that the most important thing uh, in a company is the organization's culture and the mindset. And the second one which closely follows is the people. So now if these two things are aligned, that means firstly you may have the best of people, but if you don't have a positive mindset or a growth mindset, then even the best people will not be of any use. So That is what I would say. First, growth mindset. Uh, I was just training a company in Bangalore last week, and it's a new startup, just 2 years old, and they've grown from 20 people to 50 people in the last couple of days. Now, I was telling them how important it is at this juncture to form and give, like what Prabha was saying, there's a time you've sown the seed, but are you nurturing it? Are you watering it? Is it getting sunshine? Is it getting manure? If that is not being done, later on, it is very, very, very difficult. And I've had many challenges when people have been wanting to change their organization culture because they found it had gone astray. Very difficult to get it back. So, importantly, in the beginning, when an organization is setting its foundations, that is a time to get your organizational culture, a very great vision and value system being defined, your code of ethics and code of honor being defined. That is very important. And then monitoring system that everyone in the organization understands what the value system is and walks the talk.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing that. So I think I love how you've both, left the whole, part of like money or, brand value or something else. And you've just talked about how it is, the talent and the mindset of the company and the people of the company. That is absolutely
No,
beautiful. Thank you so
no,
much.
Rajvi, they are all important, but when it comes to priority, they take a
That's so
little
true.
lower. They take a little lower priority because you have a great brand, but people don't live that brand. It's of no use. And many people think brand is a logo. It's not. It is the way every person in that organization behaves. I'll tell you my own personal experience when I go to companies for meetings and all. I start forming up the impression at the gate where how I entered that. What was the security system? How well planned were they? How much minimum time did they take to get you in, etc. And from there, whether it is a lift ban or the guy who got you a cup of tea, everything reflects on the organization's culture.
Yes. Indeed, indeed, it does. Thank you so much for that. Now, while we're approaching the end of our show, what is the one closing message would you like to give our audience from this entire live session that we have had today? Prabhasa, would you like to go first, please?
Sure, Rajvi. I just like to remind people. I think in countries, both India, Malaysia, and many part of the world, especially in developed countries, obesity is a major problem. But when you're obese, the physical, it becomes so obvious. We can see that. But in recent workshops, and I'm writing it in one of my book, I introduced a concept called intellectual obesity. What it means here is when we consume a lot of information from webinars, from internet, attending private colleges, coachings, etc., 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 we acquire a lot of information. But that information, if it's not applied to achieve the desired business result, I call that intellectual obesity. And I hope leaders and all trainers explore what we can do to facilitate our learning to be applied. And it's not one individual's job, not a trainer's job, not a L&D manager's job. It is an entire teamwork. It is a project where there will be multiple people responsible. But ultimately, the buck stops at the leader. And I
Yeah.
hope leaders who are listening to us be aware of it. And I always say every change starts with ABC, awareness before change. And I hope our conversation brings a little bit of awareness. And I thank you very much, Rajvi and Brigadier Sir, for this
Thank
opportunity to share a little bit of my experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Prasim, sir, uh, what would you like to give one last message for our audience?
So, today anyone who's listened to us and invested his or chose to voluntarily invest 60 minutes of his life with us, that's what I say. It's not 60 minutes of your time, time is life. So, you invested 60 minutes of your life with us. You would probably go back with the impression that it's very important for trainers to train well, and that is where the learning transfer will happen. But my one message is, learning and training is a personal responsibility. It is not the responsibility of the organization. It is not the responsibility of the trainer. It is your personal responsibility. Your career development, your learning style, and your eagerness to learn is your personal asset and personal responsibility. And I think each one of us should have a learning journal in which you keep writing down and record, document what did you want to learn, how much did you learn, how did you learn, etc. It's a very, very important part of your life. It is little to do, not I won't say it's nothing to do, but little to do with the organization, because you may shift organizations, but your life depends on your learning curve, and you can control your learning curve.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you so much, sir. I'd like to take a moment and thank all our viewers who've given us their valuable 60 minutes. Thank you so much to both our speakers today. Thank you so much, Prabha sir and Basin sir, for sharing great knowledge with our audience. It was a pleasure having a conversation with both of you. Thank you so much, and we will see you all very, very soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rajvi, and I must say you performed very well. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
being.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for being a wonderful host, and God bless you with more capability.
Thank you so much, sir. It is always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being there. And I hope more people will listen to the recording and learn something. Please do write your comments. We like to get feedback. And both Prabha and me, we are planning to do a lot of more work together. So, your feedback, your questions, your comments will help us. And we will be getting into more workshops together, more master classes, etc. So if you have any questions around it, keep yourself abreast with us on social media, and we'll keep announcing our programs so that we can benefit you with both leadership and training in making your life worth it. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you,
Jai Hind.
sir.